Alright, so this is just a bonus episode. It's not real content there. I'm just plowing through the game and fast forward. Well, real time, but fast forwarding the footage just to get through it and show that, yeah, I ate it on the last level, the last playthrough, and had to restart. And I just thought I'd put that in there to talk about a couple things, one of which, while, yeah, I'm not actually playing on my Model 2 Genesis, because, frankly, getting a several decades old piece of hardware, which had issues with its controller ports due to the weight of the cable actually weighed down on them and loosened the connections over time. A and B button will cut out. I could probably get a soldering iron out and fix that, but taking that and stabbing my very old console with, I don't particularly want to do. And if I did, I'd still have to amp the signal coming out of it to split it, send one to my old CRT TV, hope that thing worked too, which is going to take an RF output and look terrible. The other one's going to have to be converted up into the capture device. It's going to capture a raw pixel output, which is going to look a little off, because I'm using a shader to actually reproduce a little bit of what a CRT looks like in my playthrough here. Because that raw pixel output looks really chunky, it does not look anything like what it actually looks like. And then use that into a modern TV to actually monitor the output, and then my microphone would actually end up be in another room, so would kind of be, it could be done, but the amount of effort, I could play through the game 50 times and beat a ton of games instead, and I'd rather play games for the absolute minor difference. And I do truly enjoy the fact that you can do things digitally now. There's ways to get it. It's on Steam. You can play it there. There's just collections along the way. I do have, I think it was either PlayStation 2 or GameCube. I do actually have it on a modern console. The thing is, those are ports. A lot of times with those, it's recoded. It's not the original code. It can actually have some differences, and I'm going to get as close to the original as possible through the methods that I used. But anyway, just kind of wanted to show I don't use save states. I ate it, and I'm replaying it. And to break the movie magic, this is not the playthrough that I'm getting to the end with. Is the third one. I died on the last boss with no continues and no extra lives. Got to him, died anyway. Yeah, that happened. So just kind of turboing through the game to get to the end. Was a little mistaken on something from before. I remember saying that, about the Super Nintendo and how it actually was around this part where Super Nintendo, it wasn't out at the time, so nothing really looked like this. It was kind of, a big deal to us at the time, with all the little extras and graphical improvements. I was not right. Well, sort of. The Sega Genesis did actually come out first, especially in the Mega Drive in Japan. Got a couple of years lead on it. But Sonic didn't launch with it. The launch titles on it were actually pretty sad. So, Mario World and the Super Nintendo actually beat Sonic to the punch. I did not know that. Because my first encounter with the 16-bit era was Sonic 1 at a friend's house, and that's why I ended up getting a Model 2 Genesis later on. Did not actually realize that. But at the same time, back then especially, nobody usually got consoles brand new. I mean, of course some people did. Somebody was buying them for them to take off. But, back then it wasn't a regular cycle. There wasn't generations yet. These were still new, so trying to convince your parents, hey, can we get another game console? Like, well, you already have one. What do you need another one for? There's still games coming out on this thing. Was actually a little difficult. So a lot of kids just got it later on. I had a Model 2 Genesis, Honestly, it's kind of better to do it that way, because they actually have to make some darn games for it before you actually invest your money into it and get screwed because, whoops, all the games came out on the thing you didn't buy. Gotta love when that happens. Oh, and boy, does that happen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I mentioned somewhere in the playthrough, I own a Sega 32X. And a copy of Knuckles Chaotix, and I have them to this day, along with all my carts. I still have them all. I mean, I'm playing digital here, and I love that things go digital because it means they'll still be there. Because one day the last cartridge will stop working. One day the last piece of hardware will stop working. And they're easy enough to learn to repair, but the reality is nothing lasts forever. Like, you eventually won't, it'll be more repair than system. And the carts themselves eventually degrade. CDs are almost worse about it in some of those early games. DVDs, well, DVDs probably aren't as bad. Blu-rays for like your PlayStation 3 might survive longer. Those things are actually really tough. They're coated with all kinds of crazy stuff that's actually pretty cool tech. But CDs, especially those early CDs, they rot. They do not last forever. Cartridges too, they start to degrade, and well, the contacts will, the game itself will still be on your ROM, but the contacts won't be quite there. And on those other systems, like those replay systems that essentially try to recreate something of a physical console, they're emulators. Like the retro console or retcon or whatever it's called, I can't remember the name of it. Plays like Nintendo and Super Nintendo games. You'll see some people record using that. As far as I remember, that thing actually just dumps the ROM. You're actually just playing the ROM, and it's semi-emulating via hardware and a less good emulator than what you can get elsewhere. That could be changed. I mean, it's been years since I looked into those devices, so that might be different now. So don't quote me on it. Same thing with the mini consoles, your NES Mini, your Sega Mini, your PlayStation Classic. They're all emulators. In fact, most of them are actually worse than other things the other hardware you can just buy and put emulators on for the same price. They're a novelty. They're not really a way to... You want to pick up a thing and just plug it in game and feel like it's your old thing, that's fine. But they're not really as accurate. While I probably irritate some purists because I do have a CRT TV, I do have all the old carts. I keep them in, I have bins in my house just full of all the old games I used to just pick up on the cheap at garage sales as people sold off their old consoles. And I still had the old console, so I would just go and scoop up tons of games for, allowance money. It was an awesome time to actually get games, and I played them all. But yeah, on the other thing of backing the console that loses, I had a 32X. I actually had still plugged into the Model 2 I have in the other room. Still have it. And I have a handful or two of games for it, which means I have like a third or fourth or so of its library. Because that sucker only had 40 games worldwide. That's including Europe and Japanese exclusives. That thing ate the dust fast and was part of the downfall of, Sega as they battled between the Japanese and American halves. And just kind of sabotaged each other. I almost wonder what the gaming world would look like if that hadn't happened. The original Xbox wouldn't have been full of Dreamcast games that were ported over. It was basically the Dreamcast 2 secretly. You wouldn't have had... it might not have been in the market at all. Halo may have just been a PC exclusive. It would have taken a whole different route. A lot of RPGs would have stayed PC exclusive because they wouldn't have come out on the OG Xbox. And then, Sega would have still been in the power vacuum. It would have been probably a very different landscape. I kind of wonder what that would have looked like in a weird way. The OG Xbox was kind of nice. It did have its nice parts. Granted, DLC and paid online were kind of in its origin, but it did have good games, and it wasn't a bad piece of hardware. But in terms of Sega, I had a 32X. Backed the wrong horse on that one. But at the same time, it was kind of fun. I had a few fun games, and it's kind of funny to own something like Knuckles Chaotix, which is a very strange game. I can't remember if it's bad or good, and I'd probably end up throwing that in here in these playthroughs as well, because it was a very bizarre one. I do remember that, and it's a lot of the Sonic and Friends that nobody really cares about kind of come from that game. Sorry if they're one of your favorite characters. It's just they're pretty forgettable. They started adding so much cast as a novelty that they didn't really take much time to make them interesting, sadly. And Sonic already has a pretty good cast of characters, especially with the cartoons, some of which even from there get underused. But as it goes, so this goes to my point. Like, I could be playing it on original hardware. I got it, I could do it, but it would be such a technical disaster to attempt to and hope everything works, where the recording, the playing, and the audio would all come together. It would just be a straight out disaster to try and do that. So yeah, it's digital, and I love the fact that digital kind of will mean that these games will live on, even past when the old hardware won't, in as close to accurate form as we can hopefully get. So I kind of tried to split the difference and make it look and feel and play as identical to the original as I can, without making it to the point where I have spent so much time trying to set up an old piece of console to play a game that I could have played like 10 games instead. So that's the reason why there's a shader on that. It's the reason why figured I'd show I don't use save states. I play it the way it was played back then, and it's actually kind of more fun. I kind of enjoyed the fact that I lost, because it was like, oh yeah, man, games used to be like that. They used to be that way. You just lost. Go back to the beginning. You know, suck it up, Buttercup, and do it. I mean, I just sort of kind of liked it. I guess I hate me, but it's kind of fun. And the games were short enough, you could do that. You know, they weren't so darn long. You didn't lose 3 weeks of your life. It was just like, oh, okay, I gotta replay a couple hours. But it wasn't bad for it. Now, I can almost understand save states in like 8-bit games, because back then they were just making straight arcade ports and forgetting that people don't have a place to stick a quarter to continue on their NES at home. I can almost understand on those, because some of those games were absolutely unfair, because they would just screw you. But by the 16-bit era, I think that had kind of died down, and generally, you get to Sonic 1, it's pretty well balanced. You can get back to where you were, and you're a little better every time you play through, so it's not unreasonable to just sit down and beat the game in an afternoon. So if you're kind of curious about these games, and you think, they look kind of fun, I'd like to give it a shot, the only thing you're risking is losing an afternoon. If you sit down and play it, and try to play through the end and see if you like it, you're just spending a Saturday on it. It's nothing much lost if you decide you don't like it. I do think the later Sonic games are kind of better than 1, but 1's still pretty good. Sonic 2 is always my favorite, but nostalgia factor there. It was the first one I played, it was the first one I had. But I just want to go over that because, not using save states, I am playing digitally. I have the old hardware, but trying to get that to work, it's just too much of a pain. God, I have a lot of old hardware. But yeah, that's all it is. So we're almost back to where we were, and we'll just kind of finish it out. We're getting pretty close to the end, and hopefully Sonic 2 after that. And if I can manage to get through the 4 original games, may even throw Sonic Knuckles in there. I actually have Sonic Spinball as well. Actually a pretty good pinball game if I remember right. I remember liking it. I actually do remember liking that game. I do have Sonic 3D Blast as well. Sonic's first real trip into 3D is, to my knowledge. I don't remember it being very good. I think that was kind of my original exit from Sega Town. And going with PlayStation 1 for the next round instead of the Saturn, but kind of lucked out on that one. 90% of the Saturn's library never made it out of Japan, so maybe Sonic 3D Blast helped me out more than I realized. But I may throw some of that in there. I don't think I will play through the whole thing. Same thing with Sonic and Knuckles. I don't remember liking them very much. But it's been a lot of years, so maybe it's not bad, and I just remember it differently, and I was wanting more Sonic 3, and just didn't take it for what it was. So I'm kind of curious to find that out. But we only got a couple minutes left before we can actually, we're done here, and almost back to where we were. So yeah, see you in the next one. And this was just a bonus, so still on for the next thing. And peace out.